All right, so when you think of Saudi Arabia, what comes to mind? Probably oil, right? And just immense, unimaginable wealth. But behind that whole glittering facade, there's a really stark reality. Picture this. You've got a palace made of solid gold, but you only have 2 sips of water to drink. That, right there, is the paradox of the kingdom.
I mean, it's a fact that it's really hard to wrap your head around. We're talking about a country that's bigger than all of Western Europe, and it's covered in like 98% scorching hot sand. It gets almost no rain, and here's the kicker: not a single permanent natural river. Not one.
And yet, in the middle of all that sand, all that silence, they're doing something that sounds completely impossible. They're building their own rivers. Yeah, you heard that right. A massive artificial network for water that's going to be twice the length of the Nile. The Nile.
So that brings us to the big question, doesn't it? In a country that has literally no natural rivers, where on earth is all this water coming from? I mean, how are they pulling this off?
Okay, so to really understand just how wild this solution is, we've got to go back and look at the problem. Because this is a crisis that didn't just happen overnight. It's been decades in the making.
See, for a long, long time, Saudi Arabia was basically running on something called fossil water. And it's exactly what it sounds like. Ancient water, trapped deep underground for millions of years. The key thing to know is, it's a finite resource. Once you use it, it's gone. It's not coming back for millions of years. It's just like using a battery that you can never, ever recharge.
And boy, did they use that battery. Back in the 70s, they had this really well-intentioned idea to become self-sufficient in food. So they launched this huge wheat farming program. And with the government pouring money into it, agriculture just exploded. But here's the problem. By 2003, farming was sucking up a mind-blowing 85% of the nation's water. Satellite data started showing they were losing 2 trillion liters of that precious fossil water every single year. Finally, by 2016, the wells were running dry. The whole wheat program had to be scrapped. It was a tough lesson for sure. You just can't build your future on a resource that's disappearing before your very eyes.
And it wasn't just the farms. At the same time, personal water use was, well, it was through the roof. The average person in Saudi Arabia was using about 310 liters of water a day. Now, to put that in perspective, the world average is around 150, so more than double. You combine that massive demand with a resource that's literally vanishing, and you've got yourself a perfect storm.
So, their one natural water source is pretty much gone. What do? Well, you don't just find a quick fix. You engineer something so massive, so audacious, the world has literally never seen anything like it before.
Let's just start with this one number, 12,000 kilometers. Just let that sink in for a second. That's the planned length of this new artificial river network.
And this slide really gives you a sense of just how insane that scale is. We're not talking about some little canal here. This is an underground pipeline network that makes the Nile River look small. In fact, if you could lay all these pipes end to end, you could wrap them around the entire planet. No joke.
And the goals? They're every bit as big as the project itself. They're aiming to produce almost 9.5 billion liters of fresh water every single day. But listen, this isn't just about having water to drink. It's about bringing that dream of growing their own food back to life. It's about diversifying their whole economy away from oil. And get this, it's about pumping that water uphill, against gravity, to some of the most remote, mountainous parts of the country.
Okay, so we know the pipes are the delivery system, but that still leaves the big question. Where is the water actually coming from? The answer lies out in the sea, the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf, and in the incredible technology that can turn salty ocean water into fresh, clean water. We're talking about desalination.
So one of the main technologies they use is called multi-stage flash distillation. The basic idea is actually pretty simple. You boil salt water, the salt gets left behind, you collect the steam, and then you condense that steam back into pure water. But the scale? Wow. We're talking about hundreds of massive steel tanks, some of them as long as football fields, all working together to make this process super efficient.
But the real game changer here is a newer technology called reverse osmosis. This is a much more modern and more energy-efficient way to do it. Instead of using a ton of heat, it uses immense pressure to literally squeeze seawater through this special membrane that acts like a super fine filter. And when I say super fine, I mean it. How fine is this filter? Well, the tiny little pores in these membranes are so microscopic that they block 99% of all the salt and minerals. There's this great line from the source material that puts it perfectly.
The holes are so small that not even a virus can pass through. What you get on the other side is just perfectly pure water.
So, problem solved, right? Billions of liters of fresh water, a green desert. What could possibly go wrong? Well, it turns out this incredible solution creates an equally massive problem of its own.
Just look at that number, 329,000 tons.
That is how much toxic, super salty brine is left over from this process. And that's not per year or per month, that's every single day. To give you an idea of how much that is, the heaviest animal on Earth, the blue whale, weighs around 200 tons. This is a staggering amount of waste. So what do they do with all of it? While most of it just gets pumped right back into the sea. And this isn't just regular salt water. This brine is way saltier and way hotter than the normal seawater. And it's just devastating the marine life. It's creating these dead zones where nothing can live, and it's doing serious damage to the really delicate and precious coral reefs in the Red Sea.
Now, to be fair, they are trying to figure out solutions. They're looking at things like deep-sea diffusers, which would spread the brine out over a much wider area to dilute it. But there's also this really cool idea called brine mining, basically trying to extract valuable stuff like magnesium and potassium from the waste. It could turn a problem into a resource. It's a great idea, but it's still pretty early days for that.
But the environmental fallout isn't the only hidden cost here. There is another enormous price to pay for this man-made river, and that price is energy.
I mean, the whole desalination process itself just burns through an incredible amount of energy, but then you have to move all that water. Just the giant pumping stations needed to push billions of liters of water uphill. They consume 9% of the entire country's electricity. Think about that. Nearly a tenth of the whole national power grid is just for moving water around. And yet, despite all the costs, through sheer force of will, technology, and a whole lot of money, an amazing transformation is happening. And you've got to love the irony here. The largest country in the world with 0 natural rivers is actually going to host the World Water Forum in 2027. They're positioning themselves as a global leader in water technology. It's an incredible statement, isn't it? It shows that human ingenuity can push back against even the most extreme environmental limits. But it really leaves us with this final massive question. Is this whole project a sustainable blueprint that other thirsty nations around the world can actually follow? Or is it just an epic, incredibly expensive war against nature? A war that, in the long run, maybe can't be won?